Good afternoon, everybody. Shooting a video during the day is kind of weird for me. But with today being Mother's Day, and as much as I enjoy these videos and the data, I would much rather be with my family today and this evening. So slightly different format today. One, I'm doing it during the day and not at night. But two, slightly different format. So my name is Daniel Young. I am the owner and founder of Adaptive Perspective and the Adaptive Perspective social media platforms. And I am back to talk about the stock market, our investment strategy, and we'll say related topics. So to get the normal disclaimers out of the way, this is an unedited video. Who knows what you'll hear in the background as I film these in my house? You should, I mean, who knows? Maybe you'll hear some doors open. Maybe you'll hear my cat. Maybe not. I'm not a financial advisor. I am a strategist and a financial strategist. And then I don't speak like a herd. I walk in very limited company, and sometimes I walk alone. So for everybody who's been commenting on my videos, thank you. I love the interaction. I like the questions. I like sharing information. I also like hearing what y'all are up to. So continue to comment, continue to share, continue to get the message out and help other people on honestly how to hack the stock market and have a much better outcome than following the herd. So this week, my goal is to really shoot from the hip. I have some scratch notes, but I don't have the long scheduled dialogue like normal. So I read this article on Tumblr of all places about, and I honestly don't remember the blog it was on. Maybe it was a lady's name. Maybe it was like Janine reviews Janine reviews the news or Janine reviews the market. And I read the article and it was more like Janine does a bad job reading the market. Um, but it was more headline based. It was more attention grabber herd messaging. The herd itself follows the headlines, but that's not you and me. I mean, we see the headlines, we read the article, but we also think about stuff in the greater context of things, how things are now, how things have been. We weigh all the pieces between the Fed and tariffs and economic policy and interest rates and core CPI data, all that stuff. We look at everything and we assemble the pieces and come up with the best strategy for now as well as the best strategy going forward. So in the headline, it was, "Are we destined for stagflation?" Because um, it was more tariff hoopla, more tariff doom and gloom. Uh, their data says the economy slowed, what was it, 0.4%, which is not that much. And it may, if it has slowed, it makes sense because we're not printing money. One, I mean, the Fed is not printing money. Two, Congress is not spending money. Three, USAID is not blowing money across the world. So it makes sense that all of that spending stopped and total GDP went down, which just points at how much money we were printing and sending and not investing into the US. But for a zero point 0.4 drop, that's really not that much at all. But it was like fear, gloom, and doom on stagflation. And quite honestly, that's where we've been with the Fed in charge. The Fed caused the problem of inflation, and the same people got to fix the problem. That's government 101, and that's why it's a fucking mess. In no other point of business do the people who fuck everything up then get to fix everything and improve it. Think about that. Like in your business, if your life was a business and a third party group came in and said, "We have a solution," and they fucked everything up, would you hire them to fix it? No. That's the Fed. I mean, that's government. That's government 101. Say one thing, do another. Hire this person, pay them a shitload of money to do a job, and then have it utterly fail, and then hire the same people to do a job and watch that utterly fail, and then blame it on something else. So the Fed caused inflation. Now the Fed is fixing inflation. They didn't understand how they caused inflation, which makes it kind of hard to fix inflation. And now that inflation is dropping because the new sheriff at the Treasury Department told the Fed not to print any more money. And you've got Doge and department heads helping all the departments not spend more money. And oh my gosh, inflation's going away. And the Fed didn't do a fucking thing about it. So now we have dropping core inflation data. The inflation's lowered every month that Trump has been in office. Tariffs by themselves do not, tariffs in general do not increase inflation. But everybody's freaked out about tariffs and how they might increase inflation. Really, because all the data says otherwise. All the data says otherwise. The research says otherwise. Tariffs bring people to the table. It allows us to negotiate a better deal. And what's happened in the last 2 weeks? We have all these countries who want a better deal. They don't want the tariffs. They want to negotiate, and that helps us. That's a better deal. You have people who are afraid that Trump will spend a shitload of money. But if you read the news coming out of the Trump White House and Trump Vance uh, team effort, that let's be honest, we're going to have to spend money, but they're also bent upon bringing down the deficit. They're bent upon balancing the budget. They're bent upon paying off the debt. That doesn't sound like increased spending and inflationary spending. We've been dealing with inflationary spending. We've been dealing with Congress spending everything that we don't have. We've been dealing with Congress spending money we don't have. The Trump tax, the last set of Trump tax cuts were going to run out. Congress was going to increase spending, which means they were going to increase taxes, right? But now that's not happening. So it's very alarming to me almost that these people in the news are still commenting about stuff like it hasn't been going on. And they're still manipulating the herd. And it's important to know that the herd is going to see the headline and go one way. Like that's important because for us, we don't want to go the same way. You follow the herd, you step in a lot of shit. You want to be somewhere the herd wants to be eventually. And that's why we've been in bonds. So we had this market blip where the doom and gloom news and the Fed went, oh my gosh, tariffs. And everybody freaked out. And the herd left all that uh, equity growth stock and they pulled money out of the market. And now they don't know where to go. They want consistent money. They want for sure money. They don't like riding out the turbulence. They don't like the waves. I mean, that's Warren Buffett's thing, which that's its own giant news. Warren Buffett stepping down at Berkshire Hathaway. But honestly, nothing much is going to change there. But you've got Warren Buffett commenting on the best way to make money in the market is to ride it out, to buy when everybody else is fearful, right? To not pull money out of know when to make a move. Yes, but the best time to invest is when everybody else is running scared. So when the herd freaked out and left the market, we bought. And it's scary to buy when stuff is low. But now the herd is coming back into the market. That pendulum on the CNN FGI is swinging back into, I mean, it's already in greed, but it's swinging back into greed. And the herd is the herd's late to the party, right? We have the market swing into extreme fear, almost as low as I've almost ever seen. And the herd left the party and we bought. And we've watched that pendulum bounce its way back into greed. And the herd is putting money back into the market, but they're not putting money back into stocks. They hate the turbulence. They're putting money into bonds. They're putting money into for sure dividend payments because that 1.2 you get from the S&P 503 or it's S&P 500, but there's like 503, 505 different stocks in it. The 1.2% dividend you're getting in there is chicken shit. Uh, it's piddly compared to the at least 8%. Really, our Fidelity portfolio right now is a little above 11%. And that number is going to, I mean, I get it. That number is going to fluctuate as we buy, but the goal is to keep it not high, not dangerously high with companies who eventually cannot pay the dividend. Not that. But if we're going to cherry pick and shoot fish in a barrel in a market space that's going to consistently pay 8, 9, 10, 11% dividends, we'd be fools to pay more for less outside of the closed-end fund market space. We'd be fools. I mean, closed-end funds, you can pick up a batch of funds. You can pick up 100 different stocks encased in one closed-end fund for cheap. And not only cheap, but super discounted. So I'm getting it, we'll say, at almost $5 for almost half off value that still pays a full dividend monthly. And that dividend is sometimes 8% higher than what you would get in the S&P. I'd be a fool to invest in to the S&P. I'd be a fool, but that's where the hurt is. And that kind of proves my point. So if we look at where we want to be this week with the market at large, you've got the herd being steered into the fear of stagflation, which is where we've been. You've got the bigger issue going on. I still think Trump and Bessent are looking to force the Fed into lowering the rate because that would help everybody, but that would also help the government refinance about $9 trillion in debt. So either A, they manipulate the Fed, which means they're going to, if you know how to, gosh, if you know how to play the news will steer the herd for you. So tariffs, which aren't inflationary, deregulation, cut red tape, cut spending, drill oil, lower the cost of everything, and the economy hums along. And it's the fear of Doge, maybe possibly enlarging the job market. That would be called a softening job market or a slightly higher unemployment. But the biggest thing is that you're cutting inflation. The Fed's job is to supposedly regulate inflation. So their self-imposed metric is to keep inflation at 2% or less. So if inflation's dropping and the Fed's not dropping the rates, that's interesting. I mean, that to me alone says it's about a power struggle. It's the Fed trying to maintain their choke grip on the economy versus Trump and Vance and Bessent and everybody else trying to get them to loosen the chokehold so they can lower the rates. Because if inflation is super low, why are rates super high? Right? Like if inflation is high, the high rates are supposed to tame inflation. But if inflation is low, why are rates high? So I think if the Fed cuts rates, I think Jay Powell serves out his term, which would be next year. And if the Fed doesn't cut rates, like if the game goes on and the power struggle continues, then I think we'll see more, uh, we'll say more headwind, I guess, or more war of words between Trump and company and Jay Powell. Because if inflation, and that's the thing, if inflation is super low, rates should drop. That's how the system works. The Fed has been behind the game the entire time for a reason, because it's all about power. So if inflation really is super low and rates are super high, what the hell is the Fed doing? Not its job. So if the Fed does cut rates, which I still think a rate cut is coming, how long they hold out, I don't know. So what profits off that rate cut? Everything does. I mean, if you watch these trade deals, the trade deal last week got announced between the US and the UK, and the market responded. Automatic swing into greed territory. It was like the fear of tariffs was completely forgotten. That's the biggest problem with the herd is they have no long-term memory. They don't remember the last time they got fucked over, so they're easy to fool this time. So, I mean, as of today, looks like the U.S. and China will indeed have a new trade deal. That's sure to pump that greed meter higher. You have Ukraine meeting with Russia next this upcoming week. That's sure to skew that data even further, right? So it looks like everything is working towards pumping more into the greed cycle, and it also looks at as we're lowering inflation further, and the Fed's just sitting there on their hands or twiddling their thumbs. Pick your imagery. So if everything profits from a rate cut, where should we go? Like, where's the best place to be? You could almost argue for anything. I mean, truth be told, if everything is a great place to be, you can argue for everything. But I still think we have to be cognizant of where the herd goes. So the herd left stocks and they're shifting into bonds because bonds are those for sure payments. And when rates drop, bond value goes up and the potential for better dividends goes up. So I almost think we're in the gray area. Previously, we'll say last week's video too, it was it we're at a point where we have to consider stocks because we have the herd leaving, we consider stocks while the herd shifts into bonds. And now I think that's even more important. With the herd shifting money and pumping money back into the market and pumping money into the for sure things, bonds and dividends, that leaves open the space they left. I and I still think bonds and utilities and real estate are a great place to be. But I'm also looking back into and I hate to say the consumer end of things because I think the consumer market overall is so I don't even know the word for it. It's twisted. I mean, it's not a jungle, but it is in the sense there's so much stuff that's potentially labeled a consumer product because you can label Microsoft and cars and Amazon and real estate and ketchup and chips and shoes and grills and kind of homes to a degree. You can label all of that stuff consumer because it's all cyclical to a degree. So, but technology is almost becoming it's becoming its own category, much like real estate is done. Real estate is a consumer product in the sense that it's cyclical to a degree. It all revolves around the school year. If you look at people, when people traditionally move out of homes, now you could argue that it's when they retire, and that's not contingent upon a school year. That's true. People move all the time. In the bigger metro areas, you'll see more consistent turnover throughout the year. But in general, the school year dictates when people move. So at the end of a school year, you'll have people moving into a different place. So they'll either be downsizing, upsizing, or moving into a different school zone. And that's everywhere consistently. Therefore, real estate is kind of it is a consumer product, or at least a consumer category. But real estate is really its own thing. Technology revolves around that process as well. It's the job transition, school transition, high school to college transition, college to job transition. It's all of that, and that's all wrapped around a school year. But you also have just the ins and outs of every month. So technology, though a consumer product, is still its own thing. But because every website labels consumer products differently, and every honestly every financial group labels a consumer product differently of how they associate it inside their own division of things or categorically or category of thing, it's really hard to nail down what consumer products really are anymore. Oreo for sure, ketchup, pickles, mayo, consumers, but also they're staples. Like regardless of what the economy does, people are still going to buy those things. It's not exactly a consumer product when you're always buying it. You look for the cyclical nature of things. So on my end of things, instead of looking for consumer staples, and really instead of looking at the cyclical consumer products, cars, TVs, pillows, blankets, um, clothes in general, shoes, grills. Instead of looking at that basket, I'm not even like I'm pushing that out, not even kind of considering that. I want to look at technology and I would look at utilities. So I would look at bonds, I would look at utilities as a bond proxy, and I would also look at technology based upon technology's ongoing and increasing integration with everything we do in society. So while the herd itself is looking at bonds, and I hope they're looking at closed-end funds because that helps us. We're going to have to be more choosy on how we pick bonds. We're going to have to be more choosy on if we pick municipal bonds. We're going to have to be more choosy in how we pick utilities because all of that stuff is changing as the herd moves into our space. But I also want to look back more at the consumer end of things and not with that bundle of staple cyclical product, but at technology as a whole. And Amazon and Microsoft get lumped into that because of what they do on the technology side of things. But that's also NVIDIA and Taiwan Semiconductor and ASML and IBM and a lot of other things. So let's get into the list for the week and then we'll go from there. And I actually did look at this a little more than I normally would before I random. I'm going to sort it like normal. Uh, but I really thought about what I would invest and how choosy I would get. And if we're investing, we would invest this week. But I'm hesitant to invest this week because two things really, three things really. One, that that FGI meter is in greed territory. So if we bought, we'd have to be exceptionally choosy to make sure we get the best deal and the best discount. Two, that UK trade deal was announced at the end of last week. That's going to have implications on this week. Three, a China deal was announced today. That's going to have implications on this week. You have Ukraine and Russia talking this week. You have Turkey and what was it, Pakistan, or Iran and Pakistan. You have that group talking this week on a ceasefire. You've got all of this worldwide stuff impacting trade and US market and overall fear and overall greed influencing the market this week. And as a whole, I see that positively helping the market, which means I think that greed meter is going to go higher in the short run. So if you're investing in a greed cycle, you've got to really approach it with definitive strategy. Otherwise, you get sucked into that fear of missing out, and you get uh, so it's not so much sucked into the greed of it because you've got the strategy, but since it's in greed territory, you might pay higher than what you would want to pay otherwise. So for the list this week, I went through the master list and updated. This is still a new look for me. So I updated the purple and the green. And then I want to say last week, I updated which funds we own and how we own them. And then everything in gray and white will get updated whenever I do this next month. I updated I actually went through, I remembered to do it and go through and update the current price per share in the Roth portfolio. So you can see where that is. I keep track of total shares because I enjoy that side of things. But you can see the metrics for the Roth portfolio, which we have not added. I don't think we've added any money for 2025 yet. I was wrong. $200. Um, but that still leaves us a good chunk of change to up to 7 grand to invest for this year. And in the Fidelity account, finally got to migrate over the Webull account and keep up with those things. And I'm still missing ex dividend dates for these. I know they got paid for the month, but I would actually like the ex dividend date. It's in the spreadsheet. And for whatever reason, CF Connect has not been as accurate with certain funds as it has in the past. Um, yeah, these were the dividends we were getting out of our Morgan Stanley account at 1.74% dividend rate a year. off of that much money invested. That is not that great of a dividend rate at all. So this is the current stuff. So we're 2,800 ahead. And then these are the values per these columns. And I have listened, I have paid attention. I need to go through and make an overall portfolio video for both funds and explain a little bit more about why we're holding what we're holding. Uh, Maybe I'll do that whenever we add funds again, maybe. Or maybe I'll just make a separate video whenever we add funds. Um, yeah, in theory, this would be the time where we would add a Fidelity 5 tab, but I don't know if it'll be this week, to be honest. I'm It's that thing of I'm confident of the system and the strategy. I'm hesitant to invest in greed cycle. Um, but that's why if we did invest, so if we're investing now, it would be in the Fidelity account. That's the individual cash brokerage account. So if we invested now, we would for sure invest in what I'm going to pick this week. Or say whatever funds are on the list for the week, we would be investing in that in the Fidelity account, put it that way. So how would we do this? Well, like normal, we could go by yield. Everything's already sorted by discount. Next is dividend policy. If the goal is monthly, unless there's a really good deal on something that's quarterly, but the goal is monthly. So now that we have everything is, these two are on the list still because they're great dollar cost averages of what we already own. But otherwise, the triple asterisk list uh, is already sorted and marked based on their individual discounts. Then we sort by months, or we sort by dividend pay period, and then we come back and we can look at the overall yield and use that to help filter through. My goal is normally 9% or better, unless there's a good reason to pick something else. And these two would be a good reason to pick something else. Adding a municipal bond company for the sake of diversity, y'all know what I think of that. Uh, it's got to be better than what we already own to add something that we don't already have, which sounds kind of convoluted. So we own three outright municipal bond companies. If we were going to add a fourth or a fifth, it's got to be better than what we already have and offer us something different than what we already have. But adding a municipal bond fund just for the sake of adding a different municipal bond fund is why I hate why I loathe most people's take of diversity inside your stock portfolio. Um, so we already own these. They're great dollar cost average buys for us now. They would stay on the list. They're below the 9% threshold, but honestly, they pay a tax incentivized or tax-free, tax equivalent dividend that's based on your individual tax bracket. So their tax equivalent dividends always hover at 10%, at least for our category. Saba is the sister fund of what we already own. Allspring makes the list in the sense that it is a triple asterisk, but I am not an Allspring fan. Um, I can't, and I'm not afraid to buy something that no one else has, but I can't find anybody to write about this who writes about this company. Um, I mean, anybody. And yeah, I'm just not an Allspring fan. DNP, even though it's a premium, still makes the cut because at 5%, it's still lower than the overall 1 year average. And it's still a discount based on its own stats. Plus, it satisfies that metric of what we're looking for: bonds, municipal bonds, utility companies, real estate, and then maybe technology. But DNP, yep, I'll enlarge this so you can pause and see what they also own. But DNP would be a good ad, or we already have it, but like a good, we'll say a good fund to add more to it. Let's see, Cohen and Steers. We already own a Cohen and Steers. I don't like buying stuff. I mean, the metric is 16 and under. The metric is of picking funds under $16. And that we go for, so anything on this list, this master list of stuff, If it's above $16, it gets grayed out. If it's below 6% in dividend, which was still, I mean, 6% compared to 1.2 in the S&P is pretty dang good. But if it's below 6%, it's getting grayed out, which would be all these companies. There we go. Uh, where are we? So Realty, we already own a Cohen and Steers, so to buy another one, and I looked at the portfolios last week. They're all pretty darn similar in what they have inside. They're weighted a little bit differently. They're all pretty much the same. CGO is an interesting fund, but it's very portfolio in a can, and that's not generally my jam. Um, and it's got more. I mean, it's because it's a portfolio in a can with consumer weight. It's got more consumer products. Same with ETV. Um, what's nice about ETV is that they sell call options on the portfolio, and they use those to help bolster the dividend. Same thing with ETB. So already have it or have a sister fund. They all do the same thing. Buying a different fund for the sake of diversity that has the same pretty much makeup as the other fund is not diversity. Let's see, consumer, outright consumer. We own the sister fund. HFRO is real estate. Consumer. TEEF doesn't make it makes the list because it's the discount and the triple, but it just doesn't make sense to me as a whole. It's everything oil, but at the same time they don't like oil. Like they hate oil. Um, there it's the people who love, and I'm not saying there's not a place for solar. I mean, if you live in the country, if you live in a extremely rural area and you can put in um, solar panel or hydroelectric, generate power off water flow. I think that that's all great. Um, but the guise of we're going to buy everything not oil, and we hate oil, and oil should be eliminated, and that just doesn't make sense to me. Newberger stays a huge tech fund, but I'll stop there so you can pause the video and read all that. Uh, CIF is the roller coaster bonds buy. Um, and it's a great pickup. I mean, that's Newberger. There we go. It's a great pickup on discount and target system, but at the same time, FCO is the better bonds buy. Uh, Throughout the dip, their NAV was incredibly steady. It actually went up a little bit. Um, but it's that internal leverage option of being a BDC and a private lender. And BRW used to be straight bonds of everything, but it's bonds, stocks, and it's a mix of things. It's bonds and crypto and some stocks and a ton of closed-end funds. And it's that activist mentality where it's not going against shareholders. It's going into companies that refuse to pay shareholders decent dividends. So I mean that's going to stay on the list. River doesn't offer us anything different than what we have. WDI is similar to some stuff we have. RW bonds. Hicks is there because of the discount, but it's not significantly different based upon the discount. And so we're left with a list of what we already own. But it comes down to where you think you should invest overall and how much you would want to invest. I mean, in Greek territory, I don't know if I would invest the normal. I think our average is maybe 13.5, and it's money. It sounds weird. It's money that we have based on a portfolio transfer. It's not like money we're going to consistently have every month. Um, so would I invest the same allotment this month, or would I cut it a little bit because I don't? It's buying in greed, and then mean, one, if I trim it down, I could prolong how we invest for the next couple of months. So instead of 13.5, I could make it more like 10 grand. That would force me to really trim how we want to invest. HGLB, we own it. They've moved the portfolio to more of a portfolio in a can where they invest of everything because of diversity, because you want your portfolio diversified. No, like I would much rather, like I like companies who know what they want. I like companies that target their investments. Like if you're only going to invest in utilities, industrial, like a railroad, so you got energy transfer, utilities, industrial, and technology. I like that as opposed to we invest in everything, and it looks like we're diversifying our portfolio, but it's really spreading your money out, so you're not really making profit. All right, so with the list trimmed, bonds and other bonds, but also private lender, technology, all stocks, no bonds, all real estate, like everything real estate. There's bonds, public stocks. You've got private equity in the sense of it's private companies you and I don't have access to. Uh, DNP is everything utilities, and then you have municipal bonds. And municipal bonds are, and they're just a great buy right now. If the herd really looks into consistent dividend payers, they would be fools to not pay attention to municipal bonds because they pay regardless of how the economy does. There's a super low default rate. And depending on how you buy them, I mean, you get tax equivalent or tax incentivized dividends. I mean, that's consistent money. And nobody, well, I'll say everybody likes the idea of paying less taxes. Um, so that's the list. But if it really came down to it, so BRW is a dollar cost average of what we already have. FCO, that would be higher than our current stock average. NBXG would be, I think, lower overall, lower compared to the Roth portfolio, but we don't own it in the Fidelity portfolio. And it's sitting at about a 9% loss, or say 9% devalue depreciation of its highest point before the tariff announcement. So before tariffs, when the market was humming along and we were um, seeing positive signs on the inflation side of things, NDXG got as high as 1383, and I only know because I watched it every day. Um, and then I just watched it fall, and it fell more than 10%. I forget what number it finally leveled off to, but it's been slowly climbing back up. But at 9% off of where it was, and knowing how the economy will continue to hum along and this just ongoing push into AI and everything else, it would be a great pickup for us in the cash account. Uh, Real estate fund, utility fund, and then municipal bond fund. I don't know if I could weed this out. It would come down to more stuff that I've got time to talk about on this video, and you really get to see me figure out. And I only know because I just looked. So BRW, we've already got 1,000 shares there. FCO is close, I think, at 1,000. NBXG, we don't own in this portfolio. I wouldn't add 1,000 shares. I'd add like 1 to 200 shares. Um, HFRO has got maybe 800 shares, so maybe we would close that out to 1,000. DNP, We've bought 100 shares the last two times of investment, so maybe we'd add another 100 there. These two, we have 700 shares, so we would either. It's hard to close them out at an even 1,000 because, goodness, you end up with just this chunk of money. So if you're only going to invest, pick an amount. Like if we were only going to invest 8 grand, well, there's a chunk of it, and then it's really hard to do the rest. Like we wouldn't be able to pick up other things. So shooting from the hip and not really thinking about this in general of what we've done in the past, because it's lower, you can get more of it. BRW, FSCO, where are we at now? EXG, that goes to 1,000. Yeah, that puts us under 10 grand. So that would go to 12. That would go to 12 because I'm looking at this number plus what we already have in the portfolio. So I'd go to 12, 12, 200. That would even out at 1,000. DNP goes to 3. These two bump up to 800. That could be decent. When you look at the overall dividend a period, no, annual. You look at the overall dividend a period, we add about 80 bucks, which is decent considering, uh, let's see, the average yield just on face value would be about 9.5. That's pretty good. That would be a good starter point. I would dig into it more, but you at least get to see uh, part of my process and I like the evenness of things. I like sets of 50s and hundreds because it's easier to do the dividends. Um, that's me and my quirks. Like these off, I like the rounder number. Um, I like the evenness of things, even in larger share numbers. I mean, 800 compared to 1,000. I like that. We could do 900. Um, yeah, I mean, they would be great dollar cost average pickups for us. Um, yeah, but that's about it. So, I mean, I could talk in circles and kind of ramble my way through it, but I don't like that style. So, think of your overall strategy more than what's already in your portfolio. Think of your overall strategy and do the best things for this market. So, with us swinging into greed territory, with the herd on the move, and with the Fed having this consistent chokehold on interest rates and thereby the economy. And you have these tariff scenarios going on. You have these negotiations and peace talks going on. Think of how that shapes up in the current market. Think of how that influences the herd, and then look at look at the market long term of where you think the market will go 6 months, 12 months, you know, 3 years from now. And it's not like we're staring into a crystal ball predicting the future. There's no way to do that, right? But you have the current market, and the best thing we can do is to invest in the current market for the long term. So it's not following the herd wherever they go blindly, right? Staring at every headline. It's being aware of where the herd is, but also sifting the data for yourself. It's pay attention to the headline, read the article, watch where the herd goes. But also, if the herd is charging off in this direction, maybe that's not the best place to be, right? I would much rather be in bonds like what we have been. We've been in bonds, and now the herd is charging in our direction because we've already been in bonds. And it's great. The herd will buy more shares that will shrink the available shares on the market, which means that cost will go or the price of buy-in will go up, right? And maybe with cutting rates, maybe we'll see higher dividends. And if we watch a turn in the bond cycles where everything changes and it looks like bonds are going to dip back down, then we weigh that out if we want to stay and ride the coaster, or if we want to sell and move our money into something else. So as the herd starts to look to dividends, outright dividends, right, or away from the S&P, that's bonds, municipal bonds, utilities. Maybe we should start to look back at technology and make a great grab while the herd's looking the other way. So that's all I got for the week. Hope you enjoy my content. By all means, leave me a comment, uh, ask a question, share what you're doing. Uh, yeah, and then share the video. And if you like the content, then please subscribe to my channel. And yeah, we'll take it a week at a time. We'll evaluate the strategy as needed. I do have some additional videos to make, and I can finally, gosh, there are 2 weeks left in the school cycle of things for us. And after doing a lot of after school stuff lately, I've finally got time to make some more videos. So there's a strategy video that I've got to post. There's a closed-end fund system video that I need to post. Somebody else asked for just information on what we've got in the portfolios. And I've got all of that stuff as works in progress, but not having to do that after school help makes me doing those other videos um, more likely. So I've got stuff I can work on. I've got stuff I've got to work on. On your end of things, evaluate your strategy, figure out what you want to do now and how that might implicate or impact you later. And then whether you already if you already own it and it's a great dollar cost average, I understand. If you don't own it and you want to add it, is it better than what you already have, or does it give you something that you lack in your portfolio? Um, think of what else. And then on your end of things, just look at the metrics. Like, what are the metrics that matter to you? I'm showing what matters to me and what matters to us, but your strategy is your strategy. So, in either evaluate, reevaluate, or make your strategy, and then make your decisions based on that. Don't be don't be pulled into the greed cycle. Don't get sucked into the whole fear of missing out. Invest on data. Invest on logic, right? And leave all that emotional stuff at the side and do the best possible thing in this market for the long-term game. So whatever you have for the week, I hope it goes well. And I will see y'all on another video. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. See y'all on another video. Bye-bye.